The ongoing emphasis on utilizing renewable energy and following the revision of power pricing policy for renewable energy producers. Producers in Kenya will now be able to sell power to the national grid. Let's delve into this topic and opportunities that lie therein. Andrew Amadi, the associate, joining us from Camco Clean Energy at our Nairobi studios. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us today. So this is a change in feed-in tariff policy in Kenya when it comes to renewable energy producers, and of course represents an opportunity to make money off the clean energy space. But just delve into how exactly this mechanism has changed.
The main component that has changed from what was there before is that you can now generate and sell electricity to the main grid. The previous policy allowed for generation and sale of electricity from renewable sources, but it was limited to mini grids and off-grid sites. But now there's an opportunity for, so long as there's available resources, for people to generate and sell to the main electricity grid. And that definitely is going to expand the potential for this kind of business.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the minimum requirement there, it's 0.5 megawatts, and the maximum for solar producers is 40 megawatts. So when it comes to solar companies operating in Kenya, do they have the scale as it stands right now to capitalize off this program?
It's going to be very specific. There's going to be a certain criteria of the organizations that will be able to do that. The candidates that come off straight off, just picking out those who will have this capacity, are probably industrial companies that have that much space. If you're talking about solar, if they have that much roof space to be able to put up 0.5 megawatts of electricity. So that becomes the number one constraining factor, that it's not everybody who is going to be able to put it on their rooftop and be able to benefit from this opportunity, but those with sufficient real estate. So we're looking at potentially new property developments, established industrial organizations, but also places where there's plenty of land and a lot of solar insulation and connection to a grid. That's where it becomes interesting, because such arid and semi-arid areas can now be productively used for generating electricity. So rather than lease farming land, or land that is, well, not even that much arable, it can productively be used to generate electricity.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, you bring up, the kind of, I suppose, fight when it comes to agricultural land use, that solar farms could take the place of, in fact, just producing agricultural goods on the land. The same story happens in Italy, in fact. But what are your thoughts on how this could change the demand side of the equation, or rather the supply side of the equation when it comes to energy supply in Kenya?
Well, in terms of energy supply, there's still a fundamental question that needs to be answered, in terms of there is an enormous demand for electricity as such, but the definition of electricity generation or demand is based on the ability to pay. And so 3/4 of the population does not have access to electricity, either because of supply constraint, there's not enough electricity, but more importantly because they cannot afford the connectivity fee and the cost of the product. So what this will do is that it will increase the available amount of electricity. It will be able to assist with stabilizing the grid, especially during the drought seasons, because now there's a variety of sources. But the primary beneficiaries are probably going to be those, say, who operate mostly during the day, commercial organizations. There's going to be a more reliable source of electricity the more people take up direct solar generation without having to store it.
Andrew, tell us about Camco's ambitions when it comes to renewable energy power in the country. Is this an area of renewable energy that you'd also like to get into further down the line?
I mean, it's not just Camco, but everybody else who's been in this space of clean energy and renewable energy. This is an opportune time for rolling out projects. It has been a very prolonged conversation in terms of opportunity. So there is definitely an opportunity. There are still limitations. A lot of developers, project developers, still find that the tariffs still don't go far enough. There is a window of opportunity in the sense that the price of solar PV is probably at its lowest now, but then that will be expected to change over time. And when that happens, then there might be need to adjust the tariffs upwards because it will just not be viable. We're talking now of payback periods, say on solar, of between slightly over 5 to 7 years, which is still not attractive in Kenyan terms for investors. They would rather invest in something that would pay in 3 or less years. But where the opportunities are is in the innovative use of the technologies that are now available. There's improvement in efficiency of biogas systems, so that becomes very interesting. But key thing is what kind of models will be able to take advantage of this will be specific to to actual project developments. There are opportunities, for example, for those who already are intending to use, like I mentioned earlier, if they're using daytime solar power to power office buildings such as the United Nations Environment Program building, then that makes sense for them because their surplus power now has a monetary value to it, and that will change the payback period significantly. But for those who are intentionally deliberate on generating electricity, some will say that it's still not that attractive.
When it comes to that feed-in tariff for the solar sector, you talk about it not being attractive, and perhaps at a very low level right now you are expecting it to go up. But I mean, many say that, for example, the feed-in tariff in the wind industry is very attractive, and there has been a lot of investment going into that. So why the disconnect between, for example, wind and solar?
The attractiveness of the reason that solar is not attractive is because of the sheer intensity of the technical intensity that will be involved in putting up those projects. The level of capacity that is required is probably not yet there. So it might be able to attract cases where people are trying to take shortcuts, but those who want to do it properly still find that payback will be quite short. Wind is attractive, not so much because of its technology, but it's attractive in very specific areas where you have a tremendously high wind energy potential. So because of that factor that its availability is quite high, then that's what makes wind more attractive than solar. But with solar, you have a physical or rather a durational limitation that you're only going to get so many hours of sun in a day. As for wind, if you have an availability of over, say, 40%, like in the Turkana channel, then in that place, that becomes attractive because you have electricity to sell both day and night. So that's what differentiates solar from wind.
But as you say, the development is that those who have surplus power can sell it back into the grid now. Thanks so much for joining us for that. Andrew Amadi, Associate at Camco Clean Energy.